What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Apple TV Plus original series, Masters of the Air. This will follow part 4, which is once again directed by Cary Fukunaga. So this episode did give us a little more character development, which is what I've wanted. I know some people in the comments of my last video have said that it's following the book pretty closely and people die, and I understand it's war and that's how it works. I just want more character development, and here we got two different stories going on. We have the one with the group that made it to Algeria, to Africa. They finally get back to their base, and it goes into a little bit of detail of a new crew that's coming in, a new group of individuals who basically were out of, I think, Laredo, Texas or something like that. And there's some interesting stuff there, to be fairly honest. There's, the thing that's always nice about these series is when they introduce new recruits, new people coming in, and because of the amount of bombers that they lost, which I think was like 14 bombers or something like that, we're going to get fresh new faces into this. And so we see these gentlemen come in, and I like their characters, because not only are they a group of individuals that have reputations for being lawyers or being non-pilots who are flying these like major missions, but I like how one of them is really kind of off-put about the fact that they lost a lot of fighter pilots, a lot of bombers, but the one group that made it back, they have this big bash for, and like a party. And I find that interesting for the simple fact that like they're showing that they're human. The guy questioning, they're like, oh, why are you questioning this? He's like, well, it's kind of weird, isn't it? And the whole idea of it is not the fact that it's weird, it's the fact that they're trying to be as normal as possible. They're trying to celebrate the people that have survived, and I get it. I understand why some of the fighter pilots are a little off-put by what this guy is saying, but I also understand his point of view, because he is just like, why are we doing this? And it makes for a lot of interesting kind of conversation pieces. I just wish there was more to it. I know people have said in the comments about that I'm complaining about not going far enough, but when you have Barry Keoghan's character, who was a major character in this series, and you have a little bit of depth to him, but you don't have a lot of depth to him, and he just kind of dies, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of research put into it. It feels like we're just going to have Barry Keoghan in this very minor role and just kind of kill him off, which he died. The main character, I'm assuming, died, the actual person. But I'm just saying, like, you got to give us a little bit more. I understand that this isn't Band of Brothers or the Pacific, that it deals more with the bombing runs and stuff like that, but I want to know something about these characters. Quinn, who of course crash landed in Belgium, he comes across a character named Bailey, who ends up being kind of his cohort throughout this entire episode, and there's some really interesting things there. The character of Quinn is kind of a skittish individual. He and his companion or whatever that follows through this episode, they are interrogated like several days to sundown on like different things about making sure they're actual American war pilots and stuff like that. And I like how they are made to question, like, what is the national anthem, or the Star Spangled Banner, which I can't pronounce for some reason. What's your day? Where were you bombing? So on and so forth. They tell about the bombing that happened, that went failure. That was a complete failure. And it's a really interesting thing to see, because you get this dichotomy of like these individuals who are just trying to get home to England, which is where they're stationed. And I like that they're questioned, and then they're kind of wondering how they're going to survive. And then they're actually there's 3 of them. 2 of them have been together for quite a while, for about a couple hours now. And then of course Quinn was living in that home, like kind of kept captured and stuff like that, POW. And as they're walking towards their goal, to the person that's going to take them to England, one of the individuals is shot and killed because he's asked for a lighter and he's shot in the face. And the other two are like, Quinn and DeMarco are like, Quinn and Bailey are like, what are you doing? Well, he was with, and they're like, oh no, he was a German traitor. Well, that is an interesting thing. That is a way to develop characters, because, you get this interesting dichotomy of situational awareness where you can't trust anyone. Who can you trust? Who is this? Who is that? The guy that was the traitor apparently said he was part of the 305 and stuff like that. And it was just a really interesting scene, and it leads them to basically getting this this young girl, to basically take them to England, and they had to go through Paris, they had to go through Spain, and there's some really interesting things there. Quinn kind of falls for this young woman. He kind of has to leave her as they move on. I like the fact that, when they get to Paris, we see the Nazi German soldiers, and basically Quinn freaks out as he's being asked for his ticket. The young woman who's their kind of their guide is basically telling the ticket taker that they're deaf, and then he runs off, and she has to go, basically the young girl has to go back and take Quinn back. And then I like how Bailey basically goes, you will die if you I will kill you myself if you do that again. And it's a really interesting thing, because the nature of what they're fighting for, who they're fighting against, to be there so close to that enemy can be nerve-wracking to anyone. And you can definitely see in Quinn's face that it is very possible that he almost just gave up their who they were, and they could have died. And it's really kind of sad to see, because they're very young people and they're having to deal with this situation. And so, kind of moving past Bailey and Quinn, because they will be for later, whatever, when they get to England and Spain and stuff like that. We go back to the bash. We of course have Bucky, Callum Turner's character. He is an individual that is kind of on the sidelines a little bit. He's not piloting the next mission and stuff like that. So he falls for this really attractive young woman. And there is some really interesting things that they talk about, because they end up sleeping together. And there's a raid going on in the city that they're in. I think it's in London or something like that, when the Germans tried to bomb London and stuff, whatnot. And what's really interesting, the thing to learn about and to see with this segment, is to watch how Bucky is so kind of entranced by what's going on. But the young woman, the one that sleeps with him, basically is talking about the idea of bombing is a part of war. It's not it's a terrible thing to do, but it's a right thing to do, because compared to what the Nazis were doing, you guys aren't doing the worst thing in the world. You're trying to save people, to help people. Watching her kind of explain that to him, and having him try to get that through his head, I felt that was a really interesting kind of thing, because you never really think about it when you're watching these shows, or you have family members in war. They're always a mindset of gung ho, or try to take down the enemy. But what they don't realize is what they're doing is not nearly as bad as what some of the enemies are doing. And so therefore it takes a woman like that, or a young woman, to kind of put that into a perspective. And I really liked I liked how that worked out. I liked how that played out. And it makes for some really interesting development when it comes to Bucky's character, because it could be once again, it could just be him sleeping with the woman and walking away, and then, like I said, he wakes up, he goes out to get a paper, he sees the house has been destroyed, a house not far from where he was at, and it's all rubble. We hear a woman screaming. There's a young girl being taken down who's died, and I thought that was a really potent moment, because he seems so unfazed by that situation, where he sees what's happened, but he realizes that war is a hell of a thing, to be fairly honest. And I don't know, I found that really kind of empowering, to the point where it's crazy. It really is crazy to think about how it can be kind of kind of just not really thought about until you kind of see it in front of you. And we see a lot of war and a lot of violence today, and it's something that you still can't get over when you see it. And but he also reads in the paper that they've lost more bombers, because as we saw earlier in the episode, the crew, which is going to be led by Buck, the Austin Butler character, go on the same raid mission again. Basically, they're going to go bomb the same place because it was such a failure the last time. And he basically sees that a lot of planes have crashed or have been destroyed. About, I think, as they learned, over 2/3 of the fleet. And so he goes running back, and he's going to take charge of everything. But it's really kind of a cool thing to watch when they're getting ready to take off. And of course, one of the propellers on Austin Butler's plane, Buck's plane, is not running. And so that's when we get Sergeant Lemons that comes in the mix. He's been in a couple episodes now, and he's the engineer, or the mechanic, that basically is one of the coolest kind of intense scenes where because the propeller isn't working, he has to, as the plane's moving before takeoff, fix, I think it's called the Magneto, I think is what it is. I'm not entirely sure what that is. You can tell me in the comments. But he has to fix it. Lemons has to fix it before they take off, and they get to the last plane to take off, and that's them, Buck's plane. And you're watching this Jeep follow behind him because they got to basically take Lemons when he succeeds, and he does. He fixes the problem, and the plane takes off on time, and the engine comes on, and it's a really cool scene. I really appreciate it. But this episode was actually pretty good, to be fairly honest. I know I talk about with character development, but there was a little bit there. I wish for more, but I understand that you can only do so much if you don't do. I don't know how much research has been done on this, but I feel like some of these characters deserved a little more, to be fairly honest. I'm really interested to see this new group of individuals that are piloting, that, like I said, they were in their skivvies in Texas because it was so hot. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in episode 5 or part 5. But for now, I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10. Once again, I want more out of it, but, it's still a pretty damn good episode. So anyways, with that said, that will be my take on part 4 of Masters of the Air. Comments below, as you did with last week's episode. Let me know what you think. If you have some interesting information about it, like some people did about the pilots and the war. If you have some more, development, I guess you could say, let me know. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. As always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.